Okay, good evening, members. I'm Councillor Janetta Sams and I'm the chair of the Employment Committee, so I'm pleased to see everyone here. It's not a meeting that we have very often. Before we commence proceedings, I take the opportunity to advise you if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if that's necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the Council. If anyone else is intending to record the proceedings, can I ask that you let me know now? This is, obviously I ask the question not to stop you, but merely to ensure members and members of the public in the room know that this is taking place. Anyone? No? I would also like to advise members that they should only address the meeting by the way of the microphones and to remind them to turn off the microphone when they've finished speaking. Right, item 1, apologies for absence. We've received apologies for absence from Councillor Wales. Are there any other apologies?
Councillor English.
Thank you. Are there any substitute members?
Councillor Nagy for Councillor English.
Councillor Field for Councillor Wales.
Thank you. Notification of visiting members. Are there any visiting members? No, there isn't. Item 5, disclosures of members and officers. Oh, sorry. Back to urgent items. Are there any urgent items? No, thank you. Item 5, disclosures of members and officers. Are there any? Councillor Fleeter.
Just to disclose, I'm a member of Unison, one of the recognised trade unions, but I am not a member of the branch that covers Maidstone Borough Council.
Thank you. Kathy.
I don't know if I have to disclose this, but as being a member of Cabinet, we've had discussions around some aspects of our pay that I'll raise, and one aspect I'll raise tonight. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Paul. Sorry.
Since Maureen declared it, I better say I'm a member of Unison, but nothing to do with the Maidstone branch.
Thank you. Disclosures of lobbying. Has there been any lobbying? Nope. Okay. Item 7, to consider whether any of the items should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. I move that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed. Is that agreed by everyone? Yep. Item 8, minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of February. Everyone's received those, and are they approved as a correct record and signed? Yep. Item 9, minutes of the meeting held on 21st of May. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on 21st of May be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Yep. Any petitions? There aren't any today. Question and answer session. There are no questions from local residents. Questions from members. There are no questions from members. So move on to item 13, which is the pay policy statement. And I call upon Val Sander, who's head of HR, to introduce the report. Thank you.
So as part of the transparency legislation under the Localism Act of 2011, all local authorities are required to update their pay policy statement on an annual basis. This has to be agreed by the member committee and then it goes to full council for approval before we can publish it on the council website. The report is not proposing any recommendations or decisions other than it being noted and agreed, and the format of the report has stayed the same over the years, so it's very similar, apart from the figures have changed in the report. The key updates are in section 3.6, and that's figures for payments made in 24-25, which have been updated, and that's page 13. Page 16, section 4, that's the chief exec earnings, again that's been updated for 23-24. Section 5 of the pay policy statement reflects the requirements of the trade union facility time, And again, those figures have been updated, and that's on page 16 and 17. And Appendix 1G, which is page 31, provides details of all the salary for senior staff for 23-24. So once the report gets agreed by full council, we have the opportunity to update that report for the end of March figures before we publish it on the council website. Any questions?
Thank you. Councillor Cleater.
Yeah, just a couple of things, please, Val. Just confirmation that we have 56 staff who receive a car allowance, so they're being paid 40 pence a mile. If we have any other staff who have to use their car for any reason, I take it because they're not in receipt of that allowance, they'll be getting the HMRC 45p a mile. Only that paragraph doesn't make that clear. And I think that would be useful. The other point, if I could get them out the way now, are there any plans to look at, if you like, our grading grid? Because with the rises in the minimum wage, 3, 4 and 5 as current, and I know we're going into pay and there's going to be a pay award the 1st of April, then it's only when you get to the midpoint of 5 that you're actually going to be getting what is the new minimum wage in 2025. This is not just common to Maidstone Borough Council, there's loads of employers, but in local government we seem to have a penchant for leaving everything as it is. But what it does mean that the lowest paid career development, they all end up on spot points, and we'd like to avoid that, because further into this report is the importance of how we have a grade with room to grow with experience. So obviously the minimum wage is £11.44 now, but it will go up to £12.21 in April. So I think we probably need to look at our grading. And then the other thing is, I don't see the commitment in here, as we've always been told in group leaders meetings, to pay the real living wage. I'm not suggesting we've got a magic wand that can do it straight away, but I think our commitment should be there so that full council know. So they're my points and questions. Thank you.
So on the mileage, for staff who don't have an essential car user, they claim 45 pence a mile, so that we do pay the HMRC rates. The other question was around the pay scale. This is 24 pay scale. It's not the 25 pay scale from 1st of April, where the national minimum wage will increase, and we will move to just slightly above the national minimum increase based on the pay award. We used to pay about 2 years ago the real living wage. Because the real living wage has been increasing quite significantly, and due to the budget that's available since last year, we moved back to the national minimum wage. And we do look at the real living wage every year to see if there's a possibility to increase it. But the problem is the impact of the real living wage is not just at the lower grade, it impacts up to grade 7, which means we have to pay significantly higher than what's within the budget. And that's one of the reasons why, it was not my decision, by the way, but that was one of the reasons why the budget was agreed as it was, and therefore we can only work within that budget.
If I could just come back on that then. So how many people do we have on grade 3 and 4? Because grade 3, if we've got people there, that's going to be quite a significant change, and it is going to bump up and cause it is going to cause compression, if you like. And I think that's what I'm talking about. Although this is, I'm presuming we're only going to be offering a certain small percentage like everyone else, not huge whacking percentages, that's still going to be an issue at the bottom. So it's how many staff do we actually employ? If we've got none on 3, then we need to take the grading out, you know what I mean? But it seems to be that 3 is already a spot point, and that 4 is just going to be, even with a couple of percent of, you know, whatever percentage pay rise it is, unless it's a whacking great one, it is going to have implications. So that's what I'm trying to clarify. It isn't just a Maidstone Borough Council issue, it's local government and the NHS, and most problems. Spot just a single salary, which goes against what's in here, which says we have 3 points. So you start at the bottom, and as you develop, you go further up the incremental points as you develop with, you have your appraisal to see if you're meeting all the targets and the requirements of the job. So in local government, it's usually been, we will have a small increment as you get more experienced in the job. But a spot point is just like 3 years, there's the one salary. So that's how I see it. And I think that's the point. We need to deal with it shortly.
We are dealing with it, so I can reassure you that we will not have spot salaries. The grades, I think up to grade 6, will receive a much more higher pay increase compared to other grades to make sure there's no overlaps. So we always make sure there is no overlaps to avoid equal pay issues. How many staff are at grade 3 and 4? I wouldn't know that without looking. But they are our manual staff at 3 and 4. And also, we haven't discussed with the trade unions yet the pay award for next year, so I can't give you the figures, but I can say they will be more higher at the lower grades compared to the more kind of junior, senior grades.
Okay, Councillor Harper, then Councillor Cox.
I think it'd be worth just doing a quick spell check through the document, because I've noticed a couple of places where the English doesn't quite make sense on it. Well, on page 13, for instance, where you've got in section 3.5, in the middle bullet point, I mean, there must be a word missing, but it just says, in consultation with the leader and that of any others who have sign off the payment. So it must be sign off rights or something. There's obviously a word missing there. Well, it's the middle one, because if you look at the last bit, it says consultation with the leader and that of any others who have sign off the payment. There's obviously a word missing. And another one I spotted, sorry, it's a bit pedantic, which is on page 31 on the big table.
That makes sense to me.
What's that?
Yeah.
And who sign off the payment, but you can't say who have sign off the payment. That's not what it's...
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, I would suggest on page 31 that the headings are just slightly improved. So it's, I mean, where it says budget, it's a budget responsibility, isn't it? I mean, so you go down, and some people clearly on this list don't have any budget responsibility, but it's just to say budget in itself doesn't mean anything. It's a budget responsibility is what you're trying to say. So, for instance, the chief executive's got £25 million of budget responsibilities. Just a little bit of wording in a few places just makes it read better. Okay, so Maureen asked one of my questions, which I've written down here, which was around the car allowance issue. But it'd be interesting to understand why the people who do get a car allowance are only paid at 40 pence a mile as opposed to 45 pence a mile. And then I wondered, looking at where we refer on the same page down about salary sacrifice schemes, and clearly we've got one in place for bicycles, which is a good idea and one I'd fully support. Have we considered, or can as a local council, we consider salary sacrifice in terms of payments of staff pensions, because that's very common in the not-for-profit and commercial sector, where people pay their pension contributions via salary sacrifice, and effectively, for the same amount of money from the employer, people are actually taking higher take-home pay because they don't pay national insurance on their pension contributions. So there's actually a benefit to both the employee and the employer of having a salary sacrifice scheme. I just wondered if it, I don't know, legislation might not allow it for a council, but if it's not excluded, I wondered if it might be something worth looking into, because obviously with cost of living pressures and so on, anything which could make life slightly easier for staff at no cost to them and no cost to the council is definitely worth looking into. And then I only wondered on the trade union facility time, Obviously, we've got 2 members of staff who are full-timers doing work on it. And I wasn't all that clear as to sort of how much time they're spending, because if we're only talking about £1,800 in a year between 2 people, and then but on the bit, you know, I mean that must be about 1 or 2% of their time. It can't be much, you know. £900 is not much money for. So I just wonder, you know, it'd be useful to understand perhaps a bit more on that, and also how many people we have in trade unions, because it may be that if there's virtually if there's only 4 people and 2 of them are these officers, then
Not legally ask that, Paul.
no.
No, you cannot legally ask that. That is illegal and covered under GDPR regulations for a staff.
Well, it's only. I'm not asking for staff. I was just talking about the total number.
It's still illegal.
Okay. Well, I would say I would say if we're only paying at that amount, do we have to actually do it? Because clearly there's not much being, you know, 1,800 quid's worth of time is, you know, an hour or so a week. It seems very insignificant if we're trying to negotiate with staff.
If I come back to your questions, your first one was around car allowances, I think, wasn't it? Or was it car allowances? The reason we pay 40p a mileage for some staff is where they get essential car user allowance. They've already get additional payment, so we reduce their mileage rate to 40p. They're getting a lump sum. Did you have another question after that?
Not on that, but the other question was around about the idea of salary sacrifice for pensions.
Yes, so we do have a pension salary sacrifice scheme that we've just recently kind of promoted within the council. So I will add that in because that is missing. So we do already offer that. On the trade union facility time, those figures are from our trade union reps. So I have to rely on the data they give me. So regarding how much time they spend on kind of providing trade union support, we do have a monthly meeting with trade unions as well. So that time is already included, and any additional time is something that they provide. But we can't give you the information about how many trade union people there are within the organisation. For one, we won't have the accurate figure because not everybody pays through payroll as well. They are the ones who support staff, so it's a bit different.
But what I meant, if they're only spending 1,800 quid a year of sort of time, we can't have a large trade union membership, I wouldn't have thought.
I want to be a member of Unison, Paul. I can have a word.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you. Right, so I just got a couple of updating points. So on page 10, under the introduction, we talk about back in 2006, we worked on equal pay audit. It just feels out of date now that we mention that, and I think it would be really nice if we could bring that up to date and say we have equal pay, or better still, if we could link to our equality, diversity and inclusion policy. Would be, I think it's time that we move away from 2006. I agree on the car allowance point. I think also if you're paid car allowance and you're paid 45p, you have tax implications. So I think that's the base reason for that. I would like to see in here, probably under 3.1, because we reference lowest paid employees. Within our budget proposal this year is a de facto minimum of national living wage. As of today, that doesn't exist. So we have people in the council who are paid beneath that. And as you said, yes, I won't mention departments because it's sort of, but it's more of the manual paid employees. But, to pay people national living wage to me is moral, and I'd go one stage further and say we should insist on it with our suppliers as well. I'd love to see it, real living wage, and I've pushed really hard for that, but for the reasons you explained, Bal, it's just too much of a delta between national and real living wage to put that in as a minimum. But if we could reference in here national, that would be great. Salary sacrifice, I was going to mention, that's good. I've only got a couple of others, I think. Hold on. That was that one. On page 18, so I was really interested in the discussion that Councillor Cleater brought up, and we're saying the same thing on national living wage. I wondered whether the spine points at the top, which are escalations through a grade, you know, as you start at the job, you know, not as much as you will by the time you finish that and before you move on to something great. Is a spine point the same as a spot point, or are they different, just from my understanding? Different, okay. Be good to understand.
So at grade 3, we've only got one salary at that point. But at grade 4 and above, you'll see increment points. So once somebody's been within the council for more than 6 months, they have a pay review, and then they'll move on increment. And if once they've done that, every year they have a performance review, and depending on the performance review, they will move up an increment or they will remain where they are.
Thank you. Is there any other comments, questions, clarifications? Nope. Okay. So regarding the obviously we need to make a decision on the report. Are all those references and issues, can they all be put in, which we will then agree the report with those in there? Is everybody happy with all the additions? Yep. Okay. So yes. Yep. So can I move that we agree the proposed pay policy statement set out in Appendix 1 prior to the publication of the council website with the additions? Yes. Have we got a seconder? Do we need a seconder? Thank you. And it's all agreed. Thank you. Thank you, Belle. So moving on to the next part, which is the Chief Officer's Appointment Panel, pages 37 to 41. And Debbie will introduce the report.
Right, thank you, Chairman. Just get settled in here. This report relates to the appointment of the Chief Officer's Appointments Panel. One of the functions of the panel is to carry out the annual appraisal process for the Chief Executive and the Directors. In accordance with the Constitution, the panel consists of 5 members of this committee, at least one of whom must be a Cabinet member. For political balance to be achieved, the panel will consist of 2 members from the Green and Independent Alliance and one member each from the Conservative, Liberal Democrat and Labour groups. This means that the Independent and Fountain Oakwood group would be the only group not represented on the panel. The Green and Independent Alliance have indicated that they would be happy to give up their second place to the Independent and Fountain Oakwood group, but doing so would mean that the panel is not politically balanced. In accordance with the Local Government and Housing Act 1989, committees and subcommittees must be politically balanced unless a decision is taken to the contrary with no members voting against. The committee is asked to unanimously agree that a panel be appointed which is not politically balanced, but which represents all 5 political groups. Group leaders have been asked to nominate the members of the committee they wish to fill the places allocated to their groups. The nominations are the Green and Independent Alliance, Councillor Sams if 1 place, and that's Councillor J Sams and Councillor Cox if 2 places. Councillor Parfitt for the Conservative group, Councillor Wales for the Liberal Democrat group, Councillor Cleater for the Labour group, and Councillor Harper for the Independent and Fountain Oakwood group if they're allocated a place. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Does any member want to ask any questions? Say anything? Councillor Carpet.
Well, I know it's not for me to give away somebody else's place, and so I'm not trying to do that, but I certainly would support or feel it's right that everybody is represented. I think that's just the fairest way to do it. So if the Green and Independent Alliance are happy to do that, then I would be happy to support as per the papers.
Are you putting that forward as a
Yes, why not?
proposal?
I would second that.
So that would be to move the recommendations on page 37 of the agenda.
And obviously, as Debbie has said in the report that if that is the case, it has to be a unanimous decision by this committee. So there's been a proposer and a seconder. Are we all in favour? Yep,
That's fine.
thank you.
So that's unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we've come to the end of the. Yep, go on.
To record, put it on record, the thanks from myself and from my group over the Green and Independent Alliance in allowing us to go on the panel. I want it sort of in the formal record that we are very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. And I think what Councillor Parfitt said, I think that, you know, I think as we've shown that if we can have all groups, then even though it's not politically balanced, it's perhaps morally balanced because we can all put, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important that we're all. So if there aren't anything else to be said, I will declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Belle.